mix up my dates. Uh, but shall I go ahead and present the lecture?
Please do go ahead, and may I just introduce our speaker, Dr. Kang-San, and I'm sorry about a bit of delay here. It's the delay is also Kang-San. It's also my fault because I also set up the Zoom a little bit few minutes later because I was engaged with a student talking about the research topic. Dr. Kang-San is the head of Baptist World Alliance Network Mission, Baptist Global Baptist Mission Network of the Baptist World Alliance, and he is also serving as the head of mission studies at Redcliffe College, and he's also is executive director of Asian CMS. You have lots of heads.
No.
How can manage that? That really explains why you were a little bit delayed.
No, my apologies. I mix up. Yeah.
And his research interest is actually belonging, conversion, and belonging, as he's going to teach us about Christian conversions and multi-religious belongings, pitfalls, and possibilities. Dr. Kornstein, we already have started discussing about the problematic issue of multi-belongings in relation to the conversion. Please take the floor and inspire us.
Thank you very much. So first, let's see if I can share the slide because this slide is in the Google. Can you see the screen?
Yes, if you go to the top right, called slideshow, just press that one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Normally I share using PowerPoint, but this one, I think it wouldn't show the full screen. So let me. Is it okay if I'll just share it as it is here? You can see the slide.
Yeah, just if click that one. Yeah, that's fine.
So I think the topic, if I remember correctly, we are looking at Christian conversions.
Yeah.
And I just want to focus on the simple question for our discussion. Uh, what can Christians uh, who are followers of Jesus belongs to more than one religious traditions? So in many academic studies, they are looking at Christian conversion as individuals, but also in the last 20 years, there's been these movements of people who come to Christ and they do not want to say, okay, we follow Jesus, but we want to remain Thai or Indian or Arab. But what does that mean? Do they need to join a Western church to be called Christians, or can they remain within their religious traditions? So, of course, it's a complex issue because uh, underlying this phenomenon of thousands of followers of Jesus who didn't join the church but remain within house groups of worship, identity, and belonging that is both and rather than either or. So, of course, there are dangers of dual belonging, and what are the dangers of non-belonging to their past faith, in the sense that if I become a Christian and then I can no longer be part of the religious culture of anything that's associated with Islam, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or Hinduism. So there are sociologists who look at shifting identities, where in the past we have quite clear identity, like a cup, or a nation or boundaries. Uh, it's fine to have that identity as personal, but identity can also be a group identity, a cultural identity, a national identity, but also religious identity. So identity will be determined not only by the individual perception, but also by the perception of other groups. So we are a Baptist mission, and we do work with Baptist churches, a clear Christian identity. But we are also seeing that the fastest multiplication of followers of Jesus, some of them are in villages, particularly with the Hindu tradition, who when they are converted, then they say they want to follow Jesus. We didn't turn them into Baptist churches, but they have house groups and they multiply within villages, and they say that their self-understanding within the community is that they're followers of Jesus within the Hindu uh, religious community. Now, this is complex, but we can discuss that. So, of course, in the postmodern realities, also identities are much more fluid and shifting. And this is what the work of sociologists such as Stuart Hall. So I want to just suggest that when we talk about religious conversion, do they belong to Christ? Yes, but can they belong to a non-Western Christian identity? Many of the so-called liberal scholars or in the West look at multi-religious identity. That means the question is not just which religion, but how many religion a person can hold. So they focus on the interior, one single identity, but shaped by more than one religious tradition within oneself. So we have people like Nita, who says that who wrote this book, without Buddha, I cannot be a Christian. Now, a lot of these pluralist scholars, they can have many religious identity because there is no one truth, one Christ. There are many Christs, and we should learn from multi-religious identity so that each individual can choose uh, which religious tradition, and they can sit comfortably with two or more religious tradition. So they try to mix these two religions into one identity. But I think for Christians, a lot of my research is trying to look at this concept of liminality, which is an intermediate state between two boundaries. And for us, conversion is like a linear yes or no. The day that you become a Christian, you become a Christian. But we do not have a theology that allows a journey, and often people may struggle between two identities over a long period of time of what we call intermediate state. So in looking at who is an evangelical, of course, someone who is committed to Christ and scriptures, but I'm using the term evangelical broadly as a sociological category, where one's evangelical faith, this is someone who seeks to integrate one's evangelical faith with past beliefs, as long as they are not contrary to the life of Christ. So conversion is not an event only, not merely an event, but conversion is a journey. It is a journey, and it takes one or two generations. If we say conversion is something that you have to decide and jump from one category to the other, then of course that's fine. You just join the church. But in a lot of our research, within the heart of Buddhism, heart of Islam, and heart of Hinduism, that is generally mission through extraction. That means our approach then is that you need to join the church and you can't go back and belong to a Islamic social category, partly because many of these religions do not make a clear break between what is religious and what is cultural. So you will find that our theology of religion is good for our discussion among Christians, but for a lot of the mission context that is much more fluid and complex, we don't have such category. That means if you become a Christian, you must reject your religion. You can retain your culture, but you must reject your religion. Now that effectively means these new communities of faith, new converts could no longer be welcome by the religious communities. So in general, we say over 200 years of Protestant mission. Of course, we are proud about William Carey and the history of the Baptist Mission Society over 232 years now, where we send missionaries from the West. We make converts of Baptist tradition in Africa, Asia, Latin America. But we are beginning to see that actually what does true conversion means is for someone to seek over a period of time to integrate their faith with their past belief that includes their religious identity, as long as they're not contrary to the life of Christ. And I can give you examples during the question time. Let me move on to the next slide. So people, which I said, we are not referring to pluralist paradigm. Pluralist people like Paul Nitter say, okay, you move between different unions of religious identity. Not only that, but they seek an external identification with multi-religious system of belonging. So what pluralists are saying, which I will reject so that you are aware of my position, is against this belief that one can claim multiple or separate religious system within oneself. And the problem with this then, where there are incompatible truths, normally pluralists say you can hold them in tension. Where there are differences, there's no need to really attempt to engage with those incompatible religious truths. Others, such as Raymond Panikkar, and you can research some of Panikkar's work, some of you may have heard about him. Panikkar's work has two different stages. The early works of Panikkar is really an inclusivist. That means there's a priority of Jesus Christ in terms of his revelation and salvation. But Panikkar says when people are converted, religious conversion, we must seek to allow insights from other religious tradition and to correlate belief systems and practices between Christianity and Hinduism in his case, not merely for purposes of evangelism or contextualization, but a genuine meeting between two religions. For a long time, some of you may be aware, I grew up in a Buddhist family, Chinese Buddhist. My brother is a Buddhist monk. And many Chinese are actually secular or non-Buddhist practitioners, but the religious identity is Buddhist or Taoist or Confucianist. But basically they say folk Chinese religion. But for our family, when we were growing up, we go to temples. Our identity is to be Buddhist. And it was really difficult for me when I became a Christian. Then I reject everything of my past Chinese Buddhist identity. In our Chinese culture, we say one more Christian, one less Chinese. But this is even more difficult among Japanese, among Thais, Buddhists, people who are converted. Either they're secularists, they don't have a strong Buddhist commitment, or from tribal religions. But rarely do you find a committed Buddhist uh, attracted to the life of faith, unless they are willing to give up not only their cultural past, but give up their religion and their culture and become a Christian. So Panika wrote a lot about inclusive-based model, where Christ is a priority, but one should seek to engage each time to insights from other religions. If they're of general revelation of God, if they're not contrary to scripture, even if we do not practice it within the Christian traditions, we can learn something from the general revelations that are found in other religious tradition. And we can come back to Panika later. Now, I'm interested in what we say the third category, and for your consideration, because some of you, in looking at the first two slides, already say, wow, we cannot be a Christian and be a Buddhist. There's a group of studies among insider movements of followers of Jesus who seek to identify with their past social religious belonging while seeking to maintain a single loyalty to Christ. And this is my research area, to locate this category within the exclusivist paradigm of religion, referring to those who say I'm equally a Buddhist and a Christian in terms of culture and religion, but I'm seeking to see how following Jesus through a single loyalty does not necessarily means total rejection of the Buddhist culture. So this we are saying until now, evangelical have not had a proper self-understanding or a theology that allows us to anticipate that the gospel could subversively enter into the religious world. 200 years of Protestant work among Muslims have yielded 1% of converts from within the heart of Islam. 200 years of Protestant Western mission have yielded less than 1% of converts from Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, we are looking at this not so much as a strategy to get as many converts. No, we are saying, have we fully understood the power of the gospel to encounter Muslim, Buddhists, and Hindus within their social religious culture, and to allow them to encounter Christ? And as we participate with this new movement, we too, those of us who belong to Western denominational tradition, we too can be transformed in these new movements of the followers of Jesus within traditions. So like the book of Acts often And our board, we go and say, okay, what is religious? What is cultural? These are not Christians. Is that an easy, adequate theology of religion, or do we need to allow people into the next generation to develop? Now, some of you attended Lausanne last month. Uh, I'm going to write a missiological evaluation from the perspective of, have we developed, does the Lausanne Soul document advance our theology, understanding, and practices about engaging with followers of Christ? So we had to wait for the article. But I was part of the theology working group that contributed to Lausanne, Cape Town 2010. And we have this statement through engagement with the theology group that says that we recognize that all followers of Christ experience the challenge of dual belonging. We are Christians who belong to Christ, and we find ourselves within some cultures to which we belong by birth or circumstance. And such cultural belonging may be static, or it can be fluid and changing through life. The challenge is that while we cannot escape the fact of such dual belonging, we are called to a single covenantal loyalty to the Lord Jesus. Let me give an illustration of what we meant by this exclusive, that means single loyalty to Christ, but the sense of openness, that we can form religious community that is not Western-centric, not denominational, but encouraging people to retain their belonging with other religions. So Christ must enter not into our culture, but Christ must enter into temples and mosques. I won't share the name. I did my my doctoral work under somebody. If you Google, you'll find him. He was, so I won't use his actual name, because is this lecture going to be shared online? I think it's
Yes,
online, right? Yeah.
yes,
So
it is done.
I wouldn't reveal the name. So this person, a dear friend of mine, was a missionary from Britain to Thailand for 17 years with an exclusive paradigm to win as many Thais, Buddhists, to Christianity, and belongs to a mission that is radically exclusivist. And normally we reject Buddhism, and when people become Christian, we turn them into converts, because our idea of conversion is black and white. There is no liminal space. There's no discipleship into the next generation. Now, for 17 years, hardly most of the converts in Thailand were Chinese or tribal or secularists, but the real Buddhists are not attracted to Christianity. So he was a bit disillusioned, and he says that I major, all our mission training is about the Bible and the gospel, but I have not really understood the heart of Buddhism. So he came back when he finished 17 years with little fruit, did his PhD in the UK, and then he was radically transformed, because religion, as Ninian Smart says, is not just doctrinal. Religion is mythical, institutional, cultural, architectural. There are many dimensions of religion, but evangelicals have an approach just on doctrine. And part of the big shift then for many years, when I did my PhD on the theology of religion, on this dual religious belonging, he's one of my supervisors. And what he's doing is not just as a theologian, but he's a theological educator in a College, and then he's a Church of Scotland minister in the morning. But every afternoon, every week, he will go to the Buddhist temple. And at the Buddhist temple, he will just help these migrants from Thailand, from Myanmar, and he speaks Thai perfectly, and help the South Asian Buddhists who come to the temple in the UK. And through a few years of befriending them, they say, you have a PhD in Buddhism. Can you teach us Buddhism? Because some of these monks are folk Buddhists. And so he was talking to me and said, can I teach Buddhism as a Christian? And we seek the Lord. I said, no, this is a wonderful opportunity for you. You are self-identified as a Christian, and now you're teaching Buddhism in the Buddhist temple. A few years later, he says, Kang-san, you know what happened? They say, you are a Christian. You have been teaching us Buddhism. We live in the UK. We need to understand Christianity. Teach us the Bible. And that began a long, the 4, 5, 6 years of this friend who first didn't say you must be converted, just befriend, be the gospel of Christ among Buddhists. He's like the Apostle Paul, visiting homes, being in the temples of other religion. And over a few years, by then I've graduated with the doctorate. I went back to Malaysia, and when I came and visit him, he says, a number of monks came to Christ. They themselves going through the Bible studies in the Buddhist temple in Britain came to Christ. But he says, now, the challenge is if a radical exclusivism means I would recommend them to join Western churches. But he have decided that religious conversion is much more complex, is a journey, is not just step A and reject everything within Buddhism. He allows them to have house discipleship group within these Buddhist home groups. And over the next period of time, some of the monks themselves decided to disrobe, that they say, as my understanding of Christ grows within the temple, I myself make that decision that is in comparison with my understanding of Christ. So to me, this is what we are talking about in the West. But in Asia, we have yet to have a theology of religion that allows a genuine, that take that third category, Buddhist communities, Buddhist texts, and Buddhist tradition. So if you were at Lausanne, we have 1 billion Buddhists, 500 million, we have 500 million Buddhists, 1 billion Buddhist influence community. Buddhism is hardly featured within Luzon. We have one world religion, all the religion together. There's no need to take seriously our theology of mission and our understanding of all religions can be reduced into one single category. Of course, it's multi-religious belonging. The main movement has come from within the Islamic tradition, and some of you may be aware. So I think there is a need for us when we think about an adequate understanding of religious conversion to look at biblical texts together with Buddhists or together with Muslims. Allow the gospel to speak and transform not only adherents from different religions, but we participate in this encounter of the rereading of the Bible within the temples and the mosques. And that applied theology is applying in critical reflection. And we don't have this standard doctrine and ignore other dimensions of religious faith. It should be by the community of dual belongers. If we are Western Christians or if I'm Chinese, I don't assume that I understand Islam. But today we have theologians who were former Muslims. Often, sometimes, many of us Christians from the majority world, we are more actually our prejudices are shaped by our experiences of a confrontational encounter with Islam, Hinduism, or Buddhism. What's featured at Luzon, for example, is persecution. So these other religious communities are enemies of God. Mission is to replace them, to defeat them. So of course we understand. We have worked in Africa, for example. Churches have been burned, and often those radical confrontation with Islam dominates our theology and perception of religious conversion. But in Indonesia, in other parts where there are peaceful uh, coexistence of religions, where an Indonesian family could have a Christian as well as a Muslim in the same family. And that is unheard of in the Middle East or in Africa. So I was involved in previous Luzon consultation. Whenever we say, do we only engage with one side of Islam, the radical Muslim, or are we seeking to see that the gospel can have navigate this community of dual belongers? So the self-theologizing, we have yet to see that. These are people who are dual belongers, who are committed to Christ, who are seeking to develop understanding of following of Christ, taking the non-Christian community text and tradition seriously. So I know I'm simplifying this, but basically I'm saying we are basically developing our theology of mission and text or theology of religion based on biblical texts and among Christian communities. Seldom do we allow the Buddhists, the Muslims, or the Hindus participate in the rereading of the gospel within non-religious culture. So I want to then say that how do we approach religion? We can approach religion in a monopolar way, like atheism and secularism. Why do religions exist? Because there's no God. Or religion exists because there are two sources. There is God and there's also human sources, civilization, culture. So evangelical at most reluctantly agree why religion exists all over the world. There is a God, whether Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, God, this transcendent God, this religious system are seeking after God, but there's also the human aspect. A tripolar view of religion say why religion exists is because there is a God, but also because of human cultures. So there are these aspects that Christians in the West have not fully encountered, but we can encounter this religious culture, human civilization within other religions. But thirdly, why religions exist is because there are demonic aspects. And these demonic aspects are powers, systems of evil, presence of Satan, manipulation of economic, political, and religious system happen in all religious traditions, including Christianity. It's easy for us to see demons in Islam, demons in Hinduism, demons in Buddhism, but seldom do we see the demons within crusades, within Western Christianity, individualized or privatized religion. So it is only through our encounter with Oriental religions that we too can be challenged about this tripolar religion. So I will close with this last slide by saying that please hear me that I am committed to exploring religious conversion from a dual religious perspective, but I'm also committed to the church to be a mission community, participating in the plan of God for the restoration of the kingdom of God on earth and the rebirth of entire creation. But that is not an easy position to hold, because evangelicals typically say that if you are committed to mission, then we replace all religious systems. I think that ends my talk, and I would welcome some interaction from any of you. I don't know, how are we doing with time? Sorry, we started late.
And thank you so much. It was very interesting and inspiring, thought-provoking lecture, Dr. Kang-San. We have now 35 minutes for question and answer. And people on the Zoom, please do raise your hand using the image in your bottom left of your computer, and I will call you in. And also the people in the room, please raise your hand. We will call you in. And thank you. Let me just start. Take this opportunity to start myself first. And your talk reminded me of lots of other connections, really. One is the struggle between cyclical understanding of religion and linearity of the religion. The linearity of Abrahamic religion and the problem with Abrahamic religion, and not only is the linearity, it's also historic based. If you remove Jesus Christ from Christianity, nothing would left. And if you remove Muhammad from the Islam, nothing would left. But again, that in the East, when you go towards the East, is different issues. And the same thing with the cyclical view of religion in the East and in the Western understanding. My question is again to you. For example, when a Muslim become a Christian, and interestingly, back again, your understanding of exclusivism and inclusivism. Well, there are some Iranian Shia theologians which interestingly define inclusivism in an interesting way, mainly in regard to the Abrahamic religion, which Christianity don't have that understanding of exclusive so far. Maybe we can develop that. And therefore, the dual belonging can easily be really justified in relation to this linearity of Abrahamic religion. How this dual understanding could be understood, because, for example, it says in the beginning, the Buddhists, a convert from Buddhists, they have to leave everything behind. And yet, when we look at the Buddhists, if I'm right, because I'm sorry, I'm not really a scholar in the Buddhist religion, because the nature of the Buddhist religion may not be strongly attached to the historical as Christianity and Islam are. And I thought perhaps it would be much easier, this dual belonging, manage the dual belonging within the Buddhist and Christianity than Islam and Christianity. And but it seems, you say, the Buddhist converts also go through that struggle of the dual belonging. Can you a little bit tell us about this, the historical bound of doctrinal, mainly in relation to the Buddhist? Am I making myself clear, or it still is?
Yeah, maybe please come back to me, but let me take two particular aspects of your comments and contribution, which I appreciate that. I think within the inclusivism, if we make a distinction as committed Christian to Christ, there are two aspects of inclusivism. One, inclusivism that says that there is salvific value within the religious structures. The other aspects of what technically theologians of religion, such as Gavin Da Costa in his book on theology of religions, he said these are restrictive inclusivism. That means it restricts that it is a religion itself that has some that one is a restrictive inclusivism that says that religions does not bring salvation, but religions brings general revelation. So one, as evangelical, we can be inclusivist, but that doesn't mean we say all religions bring salvation. But there is an open inclusivism, which is not pluralist. Pluralist, all religions bring salvation, are the same. But there are people who put, they're inclusivists because they say Christ is still the normative way of salvation. But the general revelation, we can learn from other religions. We can learn from scriptures as other scriptures as long as they are not incompatible with Christ. So that theological paradigm allows us to enter Islam or Buddhism. So I have heard both. On your second point, I've heard both. There are people who say because of the shared Abrahamic faith, it is actually there is a greater commonality for this third space for Christians and Muslims to begin to say that, okay, what is it that we disagree? What is it we agree? But where are those intermediate spaces of Christians and Muslims reading their respective scriptures and find new opportunity, new insights that are not incompatible with Christianity? So that's been a lot of work. But where it's difficult for Islam is like what you indicated, is many radical fundamentalist Muslims as well as radical fundamentalist Christians does not allow this common space. So that's difficult. But in general, a lot of our research shows that the greatest movements of followers of Jesus within Islam more than Buddhism. So with Buddhism, where it is complicated, is in folk Buddhist, my brother is a Buddhist monk, he will have no problem learning about the gospel and Christianity from me. You know, when my nieces and nephew were young, he said, please go to church. And here's a Buddhist monk encouraging nieces and nephew to go for Bible study. Because in the paradigm, they are pluralists or at most inclusivists. They are not generally exclusivists. So there is a greater openness within Buddhist communities to welcome Christians, to engage in this dialogical fashion. But because Christians say, when we meet the Buddhists, let's defeat them, replace their religion. So there is no willingness of genuine dialogue, of learning. So John Stott says, dialogical mission is we want to speak, but we also want to listen. But we don't have capacity to listen and receive. So where it's complicated with Buddhism is with philosophical Buddhism. You know, a lot of this philosophical Buddhism, we would almost say actually all religions are exclusivist, including the pluralists. The pluralist says that, oh, okay, we are inclusivist, we are open and tolerant. But in the West, the Western thinking, pluralism is an exclusivist position that does not allow any other system of thought. But I'm digressing there, but I think that is just the opportunity for many of you who work within Islamic, Buddhist, or other community, but also within Western secular spheres. And we allow this dual worldview. We sit comfortably with secularism in our churches, capitalism, individual ideology, but we don't give the same accommodation to other religions. I see there are other hands there.
Yes, thank you so much. We have three hands there. David first, and then Mark, and then Andy, and then we'll come, and then Shama. David, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Kang-San. I'm really interested in what you have to say about dual belonging. Partly because of my own experience as a little kid who had absolutely no say in my parents' choice to belong to a mission compound. And as a child, it felt like I was kind of uprooted from where I felt I belonged to a rather strange setting within a mission compound. And that has, in a sense, remained with me ever since. the other reason why I'm interested in this is because of my own personal interest in investigating ways in which we can study phenomena that seem to suggest that communities or individuals want to belong to more than one settings, more than one communities. But I'm also aware of some sociological work which kind of raise questions about the claims of multiple belonging. And they seem to suggest that much of the work that has already been done really is in the theoretical and conceptual space, and very little attention has been paid to actually corroborating some of these theoretical ideas on dual belonging or multiple belonging through empirical sort of research. So, stories, of course, lots of them abound, but real empirical work very often is missing. And also, there is confusion in the minds of people who talk about dual belonging because they kind of merge ideas to do with attitudes with actual evidence of belonging or commitment to communities. So there is a problem there, but I'm also aware of studies that have been done, which are now bringing to light um, uh, some evidence of real belongings in more than one spaces. So I'm thinking of this excellent work that has been done by Kerry Chirico. I don't know if you know him, from America, originally from Brazil. But he did this exceedingly interesting work based in Varanasi in India, where he highlighted the phenomenon of untouchables turning to Christ, but deciding not to belong to a church. So they call themselves Krista Bhaktas, Christ devotees. They come for worship of their Christ to a Catholic church in Varanasi, but then they go back to their own community. So, I mean, this, in other words, is one of those very rare sort of empirical works that support the idea that you are bringing to light. What I really want to um, uh, bring to your attention is the fact that that is not very often underlined in our conversations, and that is to do with um, interests or purposes that people who want to belong to more than one spaces have. Uh, so, for example, when untouchables in India, 500,000 of them decided to become Buddhist one fine day, um, uh, they were not becoming Buddhists because they were convinced by Buddhist ideas. They were becoming Buddhists because they saw this as a way of social protest against Hinduism. So there was this social, political angle to their choice to becoming. And that didn't mean leaving their past behind. It was simply carrying their past, carrying their old traditions into a new sense of identity. So what they constructed was something hybrid, and not this and that. I've seen something similar also in a research I did among a group of Muslims called Gujjar Muslims in the Rajaji National Park many years ago. Their choice to become Islamized by the Devbandi Muslims was not really motivated by their interest in Islam, but because they wanted to be affiliated with a body of Muslims outside the forest, because they believed that that kind of association would give them power to negotiate terms and conditions with the state in which they were living. So there is this the the axe to grind angle that very often is not emphasized enough in scholarship.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm aware of the movement within the untouchables, and I think that is an interesting phenomenon. And some people say some that is hybrid, but others over the next generation, actually they really say we are not Hindus, and they begin to see what aspects of Buddhism that can be incorporated. But likewise, from the Christian conversion, as you rightly say, I think it would take, if we allow these shared spaces, whether it's hybrid or liminality, we seek to be attentive to the gospel, but we also seek to be attentive to the person. And behind the person, as you indicated, all of us from the non-Western background, we have our own compound, and we grow up with our own culture. And it is not something that you suppress, but as you encounter Christ, every person, every Hindu, every Muslim, every Buddhist can encounter Christ and the gospel without the mediation and the barriers of Christianity, which may be good for some people, but which have not released this a deeper transformation that we need. So I think it is complex, but I would value in your role, with you're aware of many of this research in a globalized world, what can OCMS research program, instead of still doing what is the past, but what are some of these challenges? I would say we haven't yet seen the real breakthrough in terms of adequate theology of religion within the mission understanding of the Christian faith. I'm aware of a few other hands. Let's
Thank
see.
you.
I keep
I
your
think,
question
may I
short and
ask,
I'll keep my answer short.
yes, exactly, can I ask you to please be brief, because we also have some questions here in this room. Mark,
Yeah.
can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
And yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for the lecture. It was fascinating in a number of respects. One of the things that came to mind as you were talking was Andrew Wall's essay, Convert and Proselyte. And I just pulled that up just now and was kind of reviewing a couple things. And Wall says some really significant things, but I'll just settle on this. A Galatian Christ must be formed among Galatian Christians if Galatia was to meet the Christ of God. And so that makes me wonder in your presentation of dual belonging, if there is a sense in which, and maybe this is a part of your liminality thing too, if there is a sense in which kind of a liminal phase of dual belonging is a step towards Christ being incarnated in a Buddhist context in such a way that he can be encountered more broadly. Is that a reasonable way of thinking about this? Have you seen any sense of that?
Yeah, and part of that is this attempt of my friend to allow Christ to be incarnated, not only within the Thai culture, but to allow Christ to enter into the temple, like the Apostle Paul with the Areopagus, because Christianity is so heavily influenced by 200 years of Western mission. We didn't get this insight that Andrew Walls is trying to say. And of course, a lot of his work has been with the rise of African traditional religions and how Christianity grew rapidly. And there is this similar opportunity for us to reflect on that. And I would also say in the West too, if we begin to see, in a post-Christian West, some of this theology of inter-religious worldview encounter can be applied. Shall
Thank
we
you.
go to the next person?
Andy, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank
And
you.
then
I think you all can hear me. Hopefully I can ask these. I'll pair my two questions together, and they concern kind of agency since we're talking about a journey or a journey that a person is on. How do we consider the various factors? You might have local community, maybe missionary, Western church, scripture. How do we think of those different factors and the individual themselves as they process this? What type of agency or factors do we kind of prioritize in that formation of the person? As well as how might you deal with conversations of persons who have already converted and maybe have had a religious change or have gone through great sacrifice, maybe broken connection from family? How do you work with those types of voices? Because surely those happen in some of these contexts or adjacent to some of these contexts.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Good to see you. And I think firstly, when we say we are looking at dual religious belonging, that does not negate that the dominant conversion experience has been the rejection of past. So we are not attaching values, but we are saying in a globalized world, there's a greater awareness that one could remain within their past religious tradition. And I think one practical thing that we often do is I use the three circles: the biblical text, the Christian community, and the Buddhist or Muslim, the non-Christian community. All three voices need to be given space. We are not conscious of how dominant, how we silence. You use the word formation. How do we disciple someone coming from a deeply religious Muslims or Buddhist Hindu community? And that is given by, even in a simple way, we understand you use the term the person, but they belong to a community. And within this community, there is the conversion experiences. So we are like midwives, but we are co-journeying with people. We come alongside. It is not for me to tell you this is what radical discipleship looks like, that what you must give up. In my own experience, it will be different from you, but also within different religious communities. So like there are 7 types of Buddhism in general, Mahayana, Theravada, Zen, for many types. But if we have just one category to evangelize disciple Buddhists, then that is part of the problem. And you can apply that into Hinduism and Buddhism. So I like this understanding that actually Christ is at the center, and as we together encounter Christ, not only the convert are transformed, we who are Christians are equally learning new truths, new insight and formation. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much for this. Maybe perhaps it's a quick one. I'm thinking here. I'm sitting. I think what you are doing is advancing the Cape Town commitment. We want to see Christ embedded and embodied in every culture. But I'm just wondering, why do you use the concept of dual belonging? I feel when I became born again, for instance, I didn't see myself as in dual belonging. I became born again, saved as a totality of me. So I think I'm going to Sarah here. Sarah, what she argued that do you see yourself as moving in some linear? Or secondly, is this much more of an individualistic understanding of the region that you are taking, which by itself, then you are negating the Buddhist community that you are dealing with at the same time? Because if you are seeing this person who is converting as an individual, then you already actually are claiming that they don't belong, even if you say that it's a dual belonging. Is it possible actually to see them, but they are saved within, they are converted as part of a system that they are of? So this inclusive dual belonging, I find it very challenging because I don't see it as a very functional kind of a theoretical understanding of what is going on in the world. For me, it seems people are saved with all the aspects of their lives and they begin to make sense of this reality even as they find themselves in Christ. Because Christ himself is in that system. It's not like he has to be out. into what you are saying, and they're not moving straight into some linear formation of their faith. I would have loved to hear a little bit comment on that.
Yeah, thank you. In your own conversion experience, is that from another religion or more
from Africa?
Yeah, but what was your past religious identity?
African traditional worldview. So
yeah, Africa,
maybe the difference would
yeah. So that is a bit of a distinction. I think one, you're right. Within our single identity in Christ, there is this growth and continuity. But what we are talking is if to belong to a community, a religious identity, it is not just us who say, I'm the same, I belong to Christ. But if you belong to Christ, you cannot belong to Thai culture. To be a Thai is to be a Buddhist. So the only logical conclusion eventually, you need to negate not only the Thai culture, Thai identity, but also because of you're negating the religion. So part of the complexity, what people find, the definition of world religion is a system of thought that's able to maintain system of belief over upheavals, sociological, global upheaval. So all the traditional, what we call cultures, tribal cultures, they could not sustain over the social upheaval, and they became Christians or they became Muslims or they joined one of those world religions. So conceptually, one of the difficulties we find, world religion is a self-contained system of belief and belonging. It stays over 2,000 years. It has never changed. Actually, Christianity have never really made an impact in world religion except 1 or 2%. So we are talking first the identity is the same, but the religious belonging is not what we can say, but it belongs to the non-religious who say, okay, you may say you belong to Muslim. The moment you become Christ, you are no longer a Muslim.